Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another Financial Autonomy episode. And today we've got an interview episode for you, and really excited and happy to have Fraser Cameron with me. So first of all, welcome, Fraser, and thanks very much for giving us some of your time.
Oh, thank you, Paul. Thank you for inviting me on. It's always great to share the story and share the message with more and more people and get more and more people taking purposeful action.
Yeah, well, I know you've got a fantastic story and looking forward to diving into it. But just before we do, now, whereabouts are you in the world? Because I've got a feeling that you're not just around the corner from me.
No, I am in New Zealand, which is just around the corner from you. But at the moment, we're living in France. So we're on the southwest Biarritz and just 5 minutes drive north of the Spanish border. So unfortunately, I'm not in the middle of summer at the moment, Paul, but I am enjoying the beautiful countryside of southwest France.
And what led you to be living over there at the moment?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that the in-laws ask a lot. So my wife and I have both travelled through France extensively ourselves separately before we met. And ever since we met, we talked about wanting to go to France together. But then within a year or so of meeting, we got married, had kids, everything else like that. There was always a million reasons why not. And I was bugging my wife every year saying, is this the year? But with jobs, with other commitments, with things like that, it never seemed right. And then it was really out of the blue. My wife said, well, let's do it next year. Let's just do it. And that was about 18 months ago now that we decided to make the call, and we planned it. And we've been over here now 10 months. And assuming we can get an extension to our visa here, there is no rush to leave.
Fantastic. Yeah, I spent a bit of time over in France late last year myself on a bit of a walking holiday. So I know that
nice.
The part of the world, and it's lovely down there. So I can certainly understand why once you've settled in, you might be keen to stick around.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, there's lots of Australians and New Zealanders down this part. I think it's the rugby influence, it's the surfing influence, and it's the fact that the lifestyle down here is very similar to parts of New Zealand and Australia. So I think it attracts the Australasians pretty strongly down here.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Now, of course, the fact that you can live 10 months so far in the south of France should hopefully, prick up a few ears. So how about we, you give us a bit of backstory here. How is it that you've got yourself into this position of being able to live on the other side of the world? And, I assume it wasn't through winning the lottery.
No, that would have been the easier option, but perhaps less sustainable. So look, as I know you and I have had brief discussion before, corporate rat race for a long time. And for the last part of it, I was self-employed, but I was a contractor, so I was still beholden to other people, still doing long hours in the office. And I remember constantly thinking to myself, Paul, that there must be a better way. I must be able to generate the outcomes that I want without having to commit hours and hours in an office and missing out on so much. So I think for me, I got home from work one day, and my eldest, who was barely 2 at the time, sort of said to me, "Why are you always grumpy, Dad?" And it was a massive shock to the face. It really was. It knocked me for 6, because here I was thinking I was this happy-go-lucky, available dad, and clearly I wasn't. So I went in the next day and I quit. And I literally packed up all my stuff. I left my highly paid consulting contracting role and just walked out, because I realized I was miserable. I was unhappy. I wasn't living the life that I wanted to be. I wasn't being a particularly good husband or father. And I certainly wasn't doing my dream work. I wasn't happy. I was gaining weight. I was grumpy. I was short-fused, all those things that we don't want to be, right?
Yep.
And ultimately unhappy and miserable, and certainly unfulfilled. So I then spent 18 months eating away at all our savings, going around in circles trying to figure out what I wanted to do, really with no idea, having these great ideas, but then not following through. And then I did what I recommend any person do, and I actually engaged a coach. I couldn't afford him. We were almost broke at that point. But but I engaged a coach, and within 2 weeks, I'd become a coach myself. I had 5 clients. I had no idea what I was going to do for these clients, but I had 5 clients who had paid up. And I suddenly had clarity around what I wanted to do. And that was sort of 5 years ago. And from there, I've built a coaching business that initially started as being reliant on being in New Zealand. And I had local clients that I met face to face. But then from working with my coach, I realized I could take this global and do it all online, much like you and I are talking right now. You know, the ability to engage with people all around the world, and do it from there. So really what enabled it is my son telling me that I was grumpy, me quitting, and me spending far too long working out what it is I wanted to do, but then finally getting clear on it and then literally just making it happen. Obviously it wasn't as easy as that, but it was as simple as that. It was like, okay, so this is what I want to do. How do I turn it into a reality? And how can I make it location free so we can travel, we can explore, we can live where we want to live, and we don't have to live just where clients are. So I think for me, it was the ultimate sense of freedom, doing what I want, when I wanted, how I wanted, and doing it living life on my terms.
Congratulations. Well, I want to just pick this apart a little bit. So first of all, you said that finding a coach was a real important pivot point. How did you find a coach?
Yeah, so I did it the way that a lot of people do. I was checking online. I was watching what other people were doing. It was actually, my first coach was an Australian guy based in the Sunshine Coast. And he was posting a lot about having freedom in his life. He'd get up and go surfing in the morning, and he'd work a few hours a day helping people with interesting things. And then he'd do yoga, and he'd go to the gym, and he'd enjoy time with family. And I went, wow, that sounds like a lifestyle that I want. Because I'm not impressed by fast cars and big houses and private jets and millions of dollars, right? That wasn't the driver for me. It was more about what the money enables, what life can you live with it. And I reached out to him and I said, can we talk? And we did, and he made an offer, and it was about 10 times more than what I thought it would be. And I said, look, I really can't afford that. And 6 months later, I went back to him and said, I can afford it even less now, but I can't afford not to. So I scrimped and saved and borrowed and found money from wherever I could to engage him, and he paid for himself literally within 2 weeks. So, and to be honest, I mean, even though I still touch base with him, I've got a different coach now as you move on, but what he did for me is still paying back now. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving. So without that first push, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Yeah, so definitely making that investment was well worthwhile. Totally. And to what extent, so you're coaching now.
Yes.
To what extent are the previous work that you did? You said you were a consultant. Was that in a technical field, or like how was that related to the coaching work that you do now?
I was a commercial negotiation consultant, so it would be a pretty loose bow to draw a thing between it, other than to say that the relationship skills. When you're a negotiation consultant, you have to have good relationship skills. You have to be able to understand where people are coming from. You have to be able to get them to see your perspective. You have to try to find that compromise in the middle. So I think those skills are very transferable and very tailorable. But other than that, I don't think anything in my previous life really prepared me for what life was going to be like and what life is like now, other than just learning about people, which ultimately is what life's all about, right? And how we interact with people and how we do that. But it'd be a pretty long bow to say there is a direct correlation, but I can certainly see some crossovers.
Certainly, yeah. There's some commercial experience there that's going to come to bear, isn't it? It's going to be helpful, and as you say, dealing with people. So then, I'd imagine the most difficult bit would be getting started insofar as we need some clients. And you said very early on you had 5 clients. How did you make that happen so quickly?
Yeah, well, actually, before that, I'd offered so many freebies because I didn't have any confidence to ask for money for what I was doing, and I was really struggling around that and doing it for friends and for people I knew. So asking for money from them was really challenging. But basically engaging the coach. He just helped me with a bit of copywriting, getting my message clear, sharing it on social media. And that's really where it came from. A couple of posts I put out that were about my story, about where I was at, suddenly had lots of inbound messages with people saying, oh, I'm keen to learn more. I'd like some of that. I like what you have to say. I like the life that you're living. I'd like a bit of that. And it went from there. So having the coach on board, who was a coach himself and obviously had launched lots of businesses, was very aware of what I needed to do then. And but to be fair, Paul, it was all a little bit of flapping in the dark at that stage. I really had no idea what I was doing. All these things were happening very, very quickly. And looking back, I can't believe I did land those clients, given what I know now about how to help people. But I think it was perhaps just a bit of a perfect storm in terms of just getting the message out there and just having people resonate at that time. But it all happened very quickly. And then after that, it all went very quiet again. So the joys of entrepreneurship, of the up and down challenge associated with getting clients and then getting new clients and having money coming in.
Yeah, for sure. And so, look, I know now the focus is, the Epic Dad theme, which is a fantastic theme, I think. And obviously it makes a lot of sense given the backstory and how you come to be where you are today. There's a great link. So was that always the niche that you focused on, or is that something that's evolved over time?
No, it definitely evolved, Paul. I started wanting to focus on athletes because I was still like to think of myself as an athlete now, but I was an athlete, and I knew that a lot of athletes, especially in professional sports, which I wasn't in, had trouble transitioning into life outside of sport and in terms of their identity and how they could make it work. So I started off in that space, and then having worked in that space for a while and not earned any money, I realized that so many athletes don't have money, and so many professional athletes don't like to spend money, especially as they're nearing the end of their career, realizing they don't know where the next paycheck's going to come from. I did a little bit of a pivot and just started making it a little bit more general, which was against all the advice of people saying niche down, but it was good for me because it now allowed me to then pivot and then change. And then I realized that of my first 10 or 15 paying clients, I think 95% of them were dads. And it was then that the coach said, so you're getting dads reaching out. They're obviously resonating with your story. Your story's around being a dad. And it sort of evolved from there. And then sort of 9 to 10 months after that, it became specifically around Epic Dads. That's when the branding and the terminology came in. And I thought, right, my niche is solely going to be dads as a result of that. It was the story I resonated with. It was what most of the people that were reaching out to me were dads. So it just made so much sense. And I realized that my journey was one of trying to find that fine balance between being a dad, being a husband, making an impact at work, still having fun things to do for yourself. So I'm like, well, okay, clearly if I had an issue with that, there must be so many other dads out there that have the same issue. And I really want to help them. Men often get forgotten in these things, Paul. And I think it's important that we empower men to make some decisions, and that financial autonomy doesn't have to be the result of 60, 70, 80-hour weeks at huge personal sacrifice, but there are other ways that we can achieve the same outcomes.
Yeah, no, very good. And sorry, give me a moment. Just need to read.
No.
Yeah, so do you want to just explore a little bit about, being an epic dad? How would you define that? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question, and obviously one I get asked quite a few times. So for me, an epic dad is someone who has it all, as opposed to having everything. So when I say having everything, that's the house, the cars, and all that, but being very busy. Whereas having it all, for me, is time, choice, and opportunity, right? So being an epic dad is someone that's got an abundance of time. It's someone that's got choice and someone that's got opportunity. Typically, it's someone that's absolutely making impact at work, home, and play. Because for me, life is made up of those three components: work, home, and play. And typically, dads dominate in one area, but then miss out on the others because they commit all their time and effort to work. And so therefore, home and play misses out, or they commit at home and play and work misses out. So really, an epic dad is someone who has all 3 nailed. So it's about being very smart and efficient with how you spend your time. And a big thing of what I do when I work with my clients is help them to create time by stripping away what they don't need. And suddenly they've got 8-10 hours a day that they can invest in all the things they want to invest in. So an epic dad is someone that typically is in great shape. Typically he's making massive impact with his work and changing the world, whether it be in a micro or macro scale. He's very present and active with his wife and kids. And he's doing the things that he loves doing, and he's full of energy and excitement most of the time. No one's perfect. We all have times when we get grumpy and when we get a little bit tired and we get a little bit overwhelmed, but that's the exception to the rule rather than the rule.
And are most of the clients that you're coaching, are they business owners, self-employed people, or are some of them, employees or executives, or where do they come from typically?
Yeah, great question. So most of them are people that start off as being employees. They're in the corporate world and they typically want to get out of that corporate world, or they want to create a life that means that they're not stuck in the office all the time. So a recent amendment to what I offer is to offer an additional aspect of my program to help people set up a business and get that business started. So whether it's boosting a side hustle or boosting an existing business or starting a new business using what I call their superpowers, to create time and choice and opportunity. So most of the people come having significantly changed careers and running their own business, doing something that is often quite different to what they've done before. It's not always the case. There's still about 10% of people are still permanently employed at the end, but often they've changed careers or they've shaken up the way that they do things in such a way. But most people go on to becoming entrepreneurs.
Yeah, geez, it must be fantastic to sort of ride that journey with them and see that transformation and that change. And also with you having had that 18-month period of turmoil and what do we do next, and that for you to be able to, well, hang on, I can save you that whole 18 months. Let's make your transition, far more compressed and successful.
And you just hit the nail on the head. That's exactly why I do what I do. It's to save them that 18 months that nearly cost me my marriage, my relationship with my kids, my sanity, literally, financially. It was a crazy time. So if I can help someone jump over that 18 months and make it an 18-minute or an 18-day journey rather than a long journey, then absolutely. And you're right. The biggest joy I get is watching these amazing men go and do awesome things, both with their family and with their community and with their work, to sit back and know that I've played a small role in tweaking and helping them get there. Like, they do all the hard work. They do everything. It's just that if I can see things and help them to see things slightly differently and point them in a slightly different direction, and then they go off and do amazing things, I get to sit back and watch the journey. And you're right. It's an amazing journey to watch, to see these guys transition from grumpy, overworked, overweight, frustrated men into happy, calm, relaxed guys exploring the world, doing work that absolutely excites them, jumping out of the bed every day, and then interacting with their wife and kids all the time. There's no better joy than seeing that, because their kids win, their wives win, their families win, the community wins, and their clients win. So it becomes a win for absolutely everybody, and you can't get much better than that.
Yeah, and your business model, and also I guess what you're coaching people to, it makes great use of, like the technology we're using now, video conferencing and, the ability, work's just changing, isn't it? The days of needing to check into an office, 9 to 5 and, work for a single employer and that sort of thing. The range of potential ways that you can earn an income and support yourself, support your family. It's just so much broader now, isn't it? And the sort of stuff that you're doing is creating those kind of opportunities, presenting people with those type of opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. We live in a much different era than what our parents lived in, Paul, in terms of the career options they had available to them. Work from home wasn't something you did. That meant you're unemployed.
Yeah.
They didn't really have the option. They had to go into the office, or they had to go into the factory, or they had to go into those things. But we live in a much different world now where you can literally work from anywhere, and do the things that you want. And our kids will have an even different, can't even imagine what life will look like for them from a work perspective in 20 or 30 years time. But we are faced with an amazing set of choices and opportunity based on the technology that's around, based on the fact that the world is getting so much smaller in terms of our accessibility to it. I have clients in 3 different continents, 4 different continents. And you know, that just when I share that with my dad, who's in his early 70s, he goes, well, how do you do that? Like, it's still for him, can't comprehend how I would, you know, when I first told him what I was doing, he goes, well, do you have to fly out and see these people? And I'm like, no, we just jump on a call, or, you know, we jump on Zoom, or they flick me a WhatsApp message and we have a quick call. I mean, it's just mind blowing. So our ability to impact the world and generate significant income is much greater than it ever was before, because we're not having to trade time for money in the way that we always used to. It's not about you have to go and sit at the desk for X amount of hours to get paid this much, but it's more about trading value for money. And you can do that with people all around the world. So your potential client base goes from the 50 people that live within 2 minutes walk of you to the 8 billion people that are in the world that I don't know how many of them have internet access, but even if you assume only 2 or 3 billion do, that's still a massive potential client base, right? It's huge.
Correct. And we've had the gift of being brought up in a country where we learn the English language, which of course is that's the one you need, right? I mean, it'd be lovely to, personally, it's the only language I can speak. I'd love to be one of these clever people that can speak 8 different languages, but if you can only speak one, economically, English is the one you want, right? And it's not through us being clever, that's just luck, right?
The way it is. Yep.
But
totally.
it certainly enhances your opportunities. I mean, for the listeners who are, they're listening and they're thinking about how they can gain choice, how they can, financial autonomy, how, the opportunities, I guess the coaching business and the people that you're talking to, where do you see the greatest opportunities for people to gain that choice, to gain that flexibility and break away?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like the 2 absolutely fundamental issues are around clarity and around superpowers. Now, by those 2 terms, I'm talking about clarity around what you want and how you can get there. Because you talk to so many people and go, what is it you want? And they don't know, or they come up with the standard answer, the white picket fence, the 2.4 kids, the station wagon, the house at the beach. It's not really specific. And it's often someone else's perception, it's society's perception of what life should look like that we have as this picture. And it's so limiting because the only way to get that picture is the 9 to 5 in the corporate office, right? So it's getting really clear on what it is you want and what it is that looks like and how to get it. And then the other thing is around the superpowers. Now, it's because it's a sexy name, but essentially it's your brilliance. It's the skills and talents that you have that are unique to you, that are combined in your own unique way, that means that you can help people. So for years, I thought I was defined by the fact I was a negotiation consultant, right? That defined me. But it really isn't. When I discovered that what defines me is I can see things that others can't, right? And I don't mean physically. I mean, I can see things emerge that others don't, and I have the ability to help others to see it. So those superpowers made me a really good negotiation consultant because it helps in negotiation, but they make me an even better coach, right? So it's really getting clear on what your talents, what your skills are. And then once you get clear on them, you can then make a call and go, am I doing the best job to utilize those skills? And in most cases, people aren't. And what else can I do with those skills? Like I've had people who never thought about coaching before, who worked in corporate jobs, climbing corporate ladders, suddenly go, oh, I want to be a speaker, or I want to be a coach, or I want to work in consultancy helping people with grief counseling, or I want to help people with health, or I want to help people with a marketing business. And so when they suddenly discover the things that when they're working at their best and what their skills and strengths really are, suddenly the world of opportunity becomes quite big. So instead of being defined by job title, their talents and by their superpowers and opportunity.
Yeah, fantastic.
So the clarity the clarity of what you want, how to get there, and ultimately who you are. Those 3 elements are so often missing with people that once they get that, instead of seeing with the blinkers on, they suddenly start seeing this massively wide land of potential.
And I think that highlights too the value of having someone like a coach to talk to about these issues, because sometimes you can't recognize that in yourself. I mean, there's someone I'm working with at the moment who's more on the marketing side of things, but there's a few things we've worked on, and he's just pointed out little things that, I don't know, it's like, I was thinking the other day, it's stupid. In our house, the landline doesn't work anymore, right? Like a lot of people, all we've got is the mobile phone. But my folks were over the other day, and Mum pointed out, oh, your phone's still over there, because she's obviously tried to ring the landline and we haven't answered. How come you don't answer your phone? It's, Mum, we turned it off 2 years ago, But actually, the phone still sits there, and none of us in the house actually noticed it, because you know how stuff you just don't. It sort of just blends into the background and you don't notice. And I would imagine a lot of the stuff you're talking about too, you don't recognize the skills and the strengths that you've got and the opportunities and the things that you could potentially do until you get someone sort of step away a little bit and go, well, hang on a minute, actually you've got all these capabilities and there's all these potential paths that you could pursue. And as you say, if you can get clarity around what it is you want out of life, certainly I can totally see the value in the coaching and why that would be so beneficial to someone. Obviously, it was beneficial for you in terms of finding the path that you're now on.
Yeah, absolutely. We get stuck in our own way. We're the only thing standing in our way is usually ourselves, right? And we can't, almost always, we can't see what's right in front of us. Much like the telephone that was sitting right in front of you guys, and you guys couldn't see it because it was always there. And it's the same. It's the same from a broader perspective, that we can't see what's right in front of us. And then when you help them, open them for them, or you don't tell them what it is they need to see, but just by asking them the right questions and giving them the right support, they step back and suddenly they go, wow, that was there all along. And the epiphanies that they have, and they suddenly go, oh, okay, I didn't know that, or I didn't realize that about myself. And suddenly they then go on these paths of the things that they can do with it. And you just sit back and go, that's amazing. People come up with multiple businesses as a result, multiple streams of income and things that they're excited about. And that's a real game changer. And we as parents need to start helping our kids have those same epiphanies when they're younger as well. Like when we were growing up, it was like, you have to choose your career, and these are the 3 things you're good at. So you can go be a counselor, or you can be an accountant, or you can be a lawyer. Whereas now we've got to sort of say, well, what is it you want? What is it that excites you? What is it that you're good at? And then don't have to define it so specifically, but actually then keep it as quite a broad thing to allow them to explore different paths.
So let's just on in terms of kids. So now, part of your reason for making this move is you weren't happy with, how you were performing as a father, right?
Yeah.
And the whole epic dads, obviously the dad's element, right? So what have you, since you've, reinvented your life and you've made these changes, how has that impacted how you behave as a father? What are you doing differently?
Yeah, great question. So for me, it's all about presence and being active. So used to always have the phone within a meter of you to check emails, to make sure there's not something important at work. Same on Saturdays and Sundays. It was always constantly there. So for me, I went from leaving for work at 6 o'clock in the morning and getting back at 7 o'clock at night to suddenly working 14-hour weeks, which means available to drop the kids at school. I did, when we were back in New Zealand, I helped out as parent help in the classroom for both of my kids, going in for an hour or 2 a week, helping out, coaching their sports teams, taking them to sports practices, just being really engaged and helping them with the homework when they get home, and finding out what's going on with them, and going to take them for experiences and exploring the surround. So it really is about, and I don't like the term quality time, because all time is quality, but it really is spending the time with them that before I made excuses around because I was too busy. And as Bill Gates said recently, busy is the new stupid. And he's so right. Like it means that we miss out. So I think for me, just having that time to invest in them and show them how important they were for me. And also to be able to have them see me living the life that I wanted to live was as much about some of the things that they come out with now, and they go, oh, but Dad, you're doing that, so we can do that too. And you just go, the power of showing our kids rather than telling them, and leading by example, and not saying one thing and doing another, not saying follow your dreams while I'm bored and stuck at a job I hate and making me grumpy, but actually saying, kids, follow your dreams, and here I am following mine too.
Yes.
So I think that's brought us much closer together. and just as importantly as a relationship with my wife, being able to invest time in that, having regular date days and date nights, and having the kids see us not constantly arguing over the fact that there's no time and everything's in a rush. I think that's really changed things as well. So it's just the time to be an active part of their life, not just throwing them an odd tidbit of time here, there and everywhere, but actually being an active part of their everyday life. And my relationship with them has changed significantly as a result. And I feel very fortunate to have a close, intimate relationship with both my kids as a result of the time I've been able to invest in them.
Yeah. And probably, how old are your kids now?
So my youngest is about to turn 7 in a week, and my eldest is 8, turning 9 in May. So they're at that, and they're now both bilingual, which is very, very embarrassing to their father, who's struggling to keep up with that. But just, they're at a really formative age where they come out with some golden nuggets and they see the world in a really simple way, which I think is golden, and we should all learn. And they really take it at face value. And some of the things they say on an everyday basis makes me go, I'm so glad I made that decision to walk away from what was considered security and create something that I'm in so much more control over. And we talk about autonomy, but I'm in so much more control of what I do now in every sense of the word. And it hasn't always been easy, Paul, as I'm sure you can appreciate. You've been through sometimes. It's been really hard, but it is a completely different life. And I couldn't comprehend for a minute going back to the old way. And missing out on so much, because as dads, it's so easy to miss out, right? We're so busy providing for our family, off earning the money to give them the house, the clothes, the shelter, the holidays, that we actually miss out on enjoying it ourselves. And I think on reflection, I go, what is the point of that? You want to be doing it as well. You want to be doing it with them. You want to be enjoying those experiences on an everyday basis.
And something that, because my kids are a bit older, 17 and 14, and you start to, my wife and I are both very conscious, you talk about missing out. Well, 17 and 14, it won't be too much longer until, they've got their license. They don't need us to be a taxi anymore. And, they're off doing their own thing. And,
totally.
That sort of window of opportunity in terms of, being an engaged parent, it's not there forever, right? So, I've certainly come across people who have pursued the career thing, got they've owned the 3 houses or whatever it is that their particular aspiration was, and said, okay, kids, I'm ready now. But kids are, well, sorry, we're off doing our own thing. It's too late now.
Absolutely. I'm very aware that I will only be cool dad for so long.
Yeah.
It won't be that long before I'm no longer cool dad. And please walk 2 meters behind me and drop me off 200 meters from the front gate of school. And I'm very aware of that. And I heard a really good quote the other day around life is short, childhood is shorter. And it's so true. Their childhood is so incredibly short. So don't waste your kids' childhood on trying to provide you things that you think they want, because ultimately they just want you. Yeah. Some of the happiest people I know are the people that live in a rundown shack beside the beach that surf every day and have great times with their family, and some of the unhappiest and most unfulfilled people I know have multiple houses but miss out on the activities that really matter, because, when you go to your grave, your legacy is not going to be own 3 houses outright. I mean, who cares? Your legacy is going to be what you leave behind in terms of your family and in terms of the sort of life that they live and the people that you've impacted.
Yep.
And that is very rarely about the material items that you add to on the list. And I'm not saying they're not important, and absolutely go for them, but don't go for them at the cost of not enjoying childhood and not enjoying more than that, also enjoying your own experiences that you love. I love travel. I love to sprint. And at 41, I'm still doing the sprinting. I'm still doing the traveling because it gives me a buzz and it makes me happier. And that just gets passed on to my kids. And so whereas before the grumpiness was being passed on. And I'm glad that I stopped it before it was too late, because then it would have been another generation of grumpy people, right?
Yeah. Now, you've touched on this a couple of times, so I just want to sort of go back. Again, just thinking about people listening and thinking about, some great thoughts. But inevitably, I mean, success isn't just a sort of straight line, nice upward trajectory graph, right? Things don't always go to plan, and I'm sure you've experienced that. Could you maybe, is there an example of a time where things haven't gone to plan, and I'm talking after you left the corporate world, and I guess how you dealt with that and how you got things back on track?
Yeah, there's been multiple times, so thinking of which one. But to be fair, look, after I got those first few clients, it was all very exciting, and some debts got paid off, and I thought, yep, we're on the path now. This is only going to look upwards. It's going to keep going up. Before I know it, I'll be earning 7 or 8 figures, and it'll all be a distant memory of when I had to borrow money from the mother-in-law to pay for groceries and the rent. But as you know, it doesn't always happen like that. And it wasn't that many months after getting out of debt that we found ourselves going back the other way. The clients dried up. What I was doing wasn't working anymore in terms of generating inbound leads. And obviously the money was quite tight. So paying other people to help me generate those leads was not an option, at least in my head at the time. And I remember sitting there going, and my wife said to me, if this doesn't turn around soon, you're going to have to go back to your old life. You're going to have to go back and get a consulting gig or a contracting gig so we can pay the bills. And I remember thinking to myself, it's not a bad worst case scenario to have, because it wasn't as if it was a terrible life. It wasn't as if I was then having to do something that was absolutely awful and selling my soul to do something. But it wasn't a viable option for me, because it made me unhappy and it made me grumpy and it made me everything else. So I think that was the inspiration enough to go, okay, so I need to pivot. What do I need to do differently? What's not working? What can I do differently to get that to work? And actually, interestingly enough, just sharing that journey, just sharing the hardship I was going through, resulted in more clients, because then people were going, oh, okay, so he's not this perfect entrepreneur that does everything and it turns to gold. It's like he is human and he does make lots of mistakes and he does fall backwards. And I think that made people want to reach out as well and go, okay, so he knows what it's like. But I think it was each time just referring back to that clarity of purpose, being really clear on what it is I was trying to achieve, and going, I'm not going to achieve that by going back to my old life. I'm really not. I'm going to detract from that, and I'm going to move away from it. So what do I have to do right now to make this work? And I'm quite a stubborn person. So sometimes I get in my own way and get quite pig-headed. So it was just ask myself questions. What can I do differently to make this work? And having the right team around you, Paul, in terms of advisors, in terms of mentors, coaches, people that you can refer to is absolutely critical, right? They talk about the 5 people closest to you are a reflection of who you are. So having those people that you can aspire to be like, that will push you and that will get the best out of you, was critical. So being able to rely and lean on those people when I needed it, and for them to then push me and point me in the right direction, helped me get out of it. And the life of an entrepreneur is a roller coaster. Even now, there's still days when I go, oh, where's the next client going to come from? And where am I going to do this? And then you just need to ask yourself, okay, so what would I advise a client to do? What would I advise someone else to do? What do I need to do differently? And what do I need to do more of the same? And you go ahead and you do it and you implement it. And before you know it, you've then got a waiting list of clients again. And you say to yourself, why was I so worried about that? So it's all just part of that cycle as well. And I think it's just riding the waves when they come, and that old saying, making hay while the sun shines. So doing that, but also then not being so stubborn that you don't pivot when it doesn't go well. And it's like it's the same with relationships, right? If it's not going well, you just keep it the same and accept that it's not going well and let it fail, or do you do something to try to change it? Well, you do something to try to change it, right? You try to adjust the way that you're approaching it so as it doesn't break or fail or die. And it's the same thing with a business. You just adjust. And so there was times when we were literally down to using what was left on our credit cards to pay bills. All the money was gone from the bank and it was just allowed to those credit cards. But then you persist, you keep relentless, you keep on pivoting, adjusting, testing, trying different things. And before you know it, you look in your bank account and it's very healthy again. So it's about not giving up. And when you've got that clarity of purpose and the clarity of who you are, just referring to that when the time gets tough, to use that as the motivation and inspiration to keep pushing and to try different things and just keep testing until you find that thing that works, and then keeping on pushing it again and then test it again. And I think the times when I have struggled, Paul, have been when I've become complacent, when I haven't pushed myself when I've got comfortable again and just sat back and going, oh yeah, this is all working. That's when eventually it falls down. Whereas when I'm at my best is when I'm constantly trying to improve. And so when I get into that habit of constant improvement and continuous improvement and constant pushing, the bad times don't happen anywhere near as much.
Jeez. Oh, well, congratulations. And would you say, historically you've been an optimistic kind of person by nature? Like, has that been an important characteristic in you persisting? Because particularly 18 months, it seems like a long time to persist, but a lot of people wouldn't gut it out that long. So is that just something that's inherent in your nature, or what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, I think so. And my wife and I having this chat the other night about pragmatism, realism, and optimism. And certainly on the optimism scale, I'm right up there. And I think that possibly is another major reason why I love coaching, because it's instilling optimism in others, it's instilling hope in others and giving them that pathway. But yeah, certainly optimistic, but also, like I said, mixed in with that stubbornness. So I'd walked away from a corporate life that had made me grumpy, it had made me unhealthy, it had made me short fused, it had made me miserable. And in my head, there was no way I was going back to that. But so when combined with the optimism, it was like, no, this will eventually work. I will eventually make this work, and then eventually it'll start to bring in our money and money for us. And my wife was going, when will that be? Because we kind of needed it last week. And she was, and completely fair enough. She's in charge of the finances. She's the one that knows what's going on. And I sort of put my head in the sand a little bit about that and went, no, it'll be okay. But it was just that relentless consistency. And you read the books about all the icons in sport and in business, and they're all people that just don't give up. They just keep pushing. It doesn't mean they bang their head against a brick wall. Sometimes they'll then move to the side and go over there, but they won't give up. They won't turn around and give up. The Sir Richard Bransons, the Roger Federers, whatever, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, you can name them all, and they've all got that same relentless consistency of just not giving up. And I think for me, it was like, I'm not going back to that life. I'm not putting a suit on again. I'm not going back in to pointless meeting after meeting's sake just to earn money and miss out on all the things I want to do. I will somehow monetize what it is I'm doing so I can keep living this life.
Yeah, you touched on there the sportsman, and I guess that was kind of the train of thought that I was having. When you think about elite athletes, I guess, versus everyone else, there's the top 100, and there's probably 10,000 others that are almost as good, but the difference is in the head. And I know you've said athletics and sport is an important element of yourself, your being, and yeah, I guess that was sort of part of my thinking is an attribute or a part of an explainer of your success, the fact that you had that background, that mindset, that ability to sort of train your brain to stay positive, to, as you say, things around clarity and some of those type of skills that then serves you well in broader life, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, totally, Paul. I think we all know that in sport, once you get to that top level, everyone's pretty much got a similar level of talent, right? But what separates those that win from everyone else is that determination, is that desire to push harder. And I remember reading Michael Johnson, the famous 200 and 400 meter sprinter from the 90s, who won double gold in Atlanta, reading his book, Slaying the Dragon. And it's all about how he failed in 92 through food poisoning and everything else, and how he was going to come back and slay his dragon. And I remember him saying he was in Texas and it was snowing or it was miserably cold, and he was out training. And his coach came out and said to him, Michael, you're allowed a day off. It's terrible weather. Why are you out here? And he said, I'm out here because no one else is. He said, I'm training like I'm number 2 in the world, and I've got to train harder than number 1 in the world because I want to beat him. And to me, it was, even though I don't train in snow because I'm a little bit soft and don't like the cold, it's that same mentality. It's like when everyone else is giving up, that's when you push. And one of my best friends is a multiple world champion in his sport, and he'll hate me for saying this, but he's not any more talented than anyone else. In fact, he's probably got less talent than a lot of the people he beat, but he was so relentless in his pursuit, so fastidious in his approach to his preparation and the way he tried things, that he's still at the top in his early to mid 40s now. He just turned 43. He's still at the top of his game because of the way that he approaches it and his lack of willingness to give up. And when something doesn't work, he tries something else. When he pivots and pushes over there, he creates a new avenue to achieve that same outcome. And talent only gets you so far. And once you get to the top, just about everyone's got the same level of talent. So it's like, what's that differentiator? And Roger Federer is another example. I know over in the Aussie Open, he got beaten recently, but he's still at the top of his game because he continuously reinvents himself and tries something new, changes his backhand, changes this. He just pivots and changes, but he doesn't give up. And I think that's the internal optimist in these people that just goes, no, it'll come right in the end. It'll be okay. And it really does for them because they make it happen, right? They don't wait for it to happen.
Yep.
They go out there and make it happen. And I think for most of my 18-month journey, I was waiting for it to happen. But towards the end, by engaging the coach, I made the decision to make it happen. And so I could have saved myself 16 months of pain there, but it is what it is.
But that's another great time with sportsmen that I just wanted to circle back on, because something that I sometimes talk to people about is, hey, even Roger Federer has a coach, right?
Totally. Multiple coaches.
Right. So, you're coaching people. Obviously, I'm coaching people around financial autonomy as well. That an ingredient to success that the best tend to find is working with others, right? Because you can't, and we touched on this earlier, but you can't see everything yourself, and getting some outside perspective can really make a difference and get you from, where you are now, and you're progressively, you're improving a couple of % every year or something. And then, you talk to someone, you get some external advice and some fresh perspective. And then all of a sudden you make this big step and, you fast forward. It's, there's a lot of commonalities there.
Absolutely. The point of getting a coach in any element of your life is to accelerate your development and to emphasize it and increase it. Like without a coach, would Roger Federer have been a great tennis player? Absolutely. Would he have been the greatest of all time? No. Would he have won as many Grand Slams as he'd won without the coaching and the help along the way? No. So it's the difference between being very good and being great or epic. It's that want to push harder. And I heard a definition of a coach the other day as someone sitting outside the picture frame looking in. And it's so true. Like it's someone literally looking in that can see things that you can't. And you're right. It's around everything in life. It's finances, it's your personal development, it's your professional development, it's parenting, it's relationships. Like it literally is everything. So having people to help and advise you and guide you along the way is ultimately invaluable, because then you continuously grow rather than get stuck in that same spot.
Yeah. Geez, well put. All right. Well, look, I better let you go. You've been very generous with your time, Fraser. So thank you very much. Now, I'm sure, having heard, your thoughts and what you do, there's going to be tons of people that are going to want to find out more about Fraser Cameron. So where can they hunt you down? Where can they follow you? Point them in the right direction.
So look, my website's www.frasercameron.com. But I'm the most active, as you know, Paul, on LinkedIn. So people can just do a search for me on there. It's a social media platform of choice for me at the moment, although Instagram's growing on me is something that's a little bit different. But those are the two best places. So LinkedIn and the website are the two easiest and simplest places for people to check it out.
Yes, and as Fraser touched on, I did indeed find him on LinkedIn, and that was because Fraser does some fantastic videos in LinkedIn, and the one I came across you initially was a Christmas one that was really, really good. And so, I'd encourage people to particularly search you out on LinkedIn because, Fraser comes out with some fantastic content, and it's really good. So, well worth your time. Well, look, thanks again, Fraser. Very generous of you to, share all your thoughts, your wisdom, your experiences. And I'm sure, a lot of the listeners will get a lot of value out of that. So thank you very much for your time.
Paul, thank you so much for having me on. It's always great to get to know someone else and to share your story and hopefully just impact some people out there and prompt them into action, because that's the whole point of it, right? If the more people taking purposeful action, the more happiness, the more wealth, the more richness, and however you wanted to define it, and the more freedom and fulfillment we'll have out there. So I greatly appreciate the time and the opportunity to come and talk to you today.
Fantastic. Thank you. And you keep enjoying the south of France.
Thank you. Cheers.